is it your own expectations or if it's someone else's expectations? Because overworking or getting burned out can also be a sign of possibly not setting boundaries.
What's up, ADHD reWired listeners? Before we get started, I have a couple announcements. If you are listening to this on the day it came out, we have 3 events coming up. One is our live Q&A happening today at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join us live on Zoom, then head on over to the website, ADHDrewired.com, and click on the events tab at the top of the page. Then we are having a second event today, right after the live Q&A, a registration and Q&A event specifically for our upcoming winter season of coaching groups. Our winter season starts in just 2 days as of this release, so don't wait. You can register to join us for that live event happening after the live Q&A at coachingrewired.com. Once you do that, keep an eye out in your email for a link to join us. And if today doesn't work for your schedule, there's still time to join me, Kristen, or Brian for our upcoming winter season. But time is running out fast because, like I said, our winter season starts in just 2 days as of this release. So go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our interest list so you can join us tomorrow on Wednesday, January 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's tomorrow, Wednesday, January 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you do your best work at the very, very last minute, that time is now. All the details are at the website. Go now to coachingrewired.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our live monthly Q&A. This is the last one we are doing in 2023. The date is December 12th. New Year's is just around the corner. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, I hope your holidays went smooth and you're kicking off the new year well with intention. So let's quickly say hello to everyone who is here from our panel and our team. We have Coach Brian Entler. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great today, Eric. Thank you.
And we have Coach Kristen Martz. How you doing, Kristen?
Doing all right. Thanks.
Glad you're here. And we have Coach Dana Cruz, who's actually now one of our one-on-one coaches and also a therapist and coach in her own practice. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Eric. Nice to be here.
Good to see you. And we have Laura.
Howdy.
Howdy. And we have Lisa, my assistant, a community manager, and doer of all things. How you doing, Lisa?
Good. Hi, everyone.
All right. And we have kicking off our first question today, we have Jesse. So Jesse, let's get you unmuted so you can ask us your question. Go ahead.
For the podcast listeners, hopefully this will be helpful for next year. But for us now, as we're going into the holidays, I'm curious if you can share any tips on dealing with family members that may be a little bit invalidating or gaslighting and just kind of generally don't agree with ADHD and symptoms. And I feel like the obvious answer is, you don't have to share. But there are other people in the family who I do want to share about. And this has become a big part of my life and my work. And I'm just looking for some tips on staying regulated when I feel like, some people are pushing buttons.
It's a really, really great question, Jesse. First thing I want to say is I'm sorry you're having to experience the suck that is not being validated by those who, reportedly love you. That's a really crappy feeling. And I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. One of my favorite lines from Brené Brown is that it's not our job to be the asshole whisperer.
I like that.
If you are expressing something that is heartfelt, that is important to you, and the people receiving that are interested in that, you got a couple choices. You can either try to change the people that you're around or you change the people you're around.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. And I've definitely worked on making sure that I have, some people that are kind of aware when I might need a rescue and help. And I've made sure that I'm in a space where I can walk away if I need to. I think it's it's hard when you're at a table, or you're in the kitchen around the holidays and you're maybe sharing with one person and another person kind of maybe butts in or overhears or shares their opinion. And you can't really change everyone you're around and avoiding the people that do count. You know what I mean? So I've decided that I do want to spend time with some people, and that means being around other people. And I think it's just trying to figure out what I can control for myself. Like, what can I do to help keep my cool and not kind of fall into old habits and maybe, old triggers on responding the ways that I have in the past. I'm looking for new ways to respond.
Let's hear what the panel thinks. Any other thoughts? 'Cause I have like 10 other thoughts, but I want to give other people a chance to share their thoughts. Kristen, go ahead.
I kind of like the idea sometimes of what I used to do for my daughter, which always came easier to advocate for her because it wasn't for me, but to do that thing of, well, wait a minute. I don't think you understand enough about ADHD. Do you have a few minutes? Let me tell you about it. Because they will walk away if they are not interested. Because I agree, Jesse, we can do that reframe in our head. I mean, I do a lot of that. I'll hear them in the other room and I'll be like, oh boy. Okay. Well, it's just because they don't understand. And I think also that people love us, but they don't necessarily know how to show love. We all weren't taught and role modeled the best ways for us. So I don't think their intentions are necessarily bad. But it's that idea of, if I have to engage them, I'm probably going to play that, that little playbook of, oh, wait, no, they're learning so much more about ADHD. Can I tell you? Or you just start talking. If they dismiss it and go, oh, well, sorry, that's just, I keep learning so much about it. And it's been so helpful for me and so validating. And I start using those words.
Awesome. Laura?
So you know me, I'm the resources person. I wanted to just mention the book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, which I have found to be incredibly helpful. It is a little bit more on the blunt side, but my feeling is that with people who are being dickish, it's okay to return that energy to them. Sometimes people don't stand up to people who are rude, particularly family. So I don't know if that's a route that is comfortable for you, but if it is, maybe practicing being a little bit more blunt could be useful.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that I'm working on. And that's, I haven't read the book, but I definitely followed the Instagram and there's been some good tips there. And I think being blunt and honest is something that I'm practicing too, because in the past that hasn't always been taken so well. And then, I'm kind of, the old undiagnosed ADHD, right? I'm the drama queen. I'm bringing, a fight to it when I'm just trying to set some boundaries or stand up for myself. So I've been practicing that. I've been working on it, and we'll see how it goes this year. But that's helpful.
And Jesse, to think about like those like very like elementary like I statements, like I feel this when you say this. Right? What I would like is, right, because sometimes people like they say these things because it's what they've always said, it's what they've always heard, and haven't really paused to consider that they're maybe being an asshole, not even realizing it. So sometimes if we can kind of just put the mirror back on them with not being mean but just like, hey, like you're hurting me when you say this.
And if I'm being honest too, I think a lot of it is a mirror of, undiagnosed neurodivergence in the rest of the family too. So I think there's a lot of defensiveness and maybe shame coming from their side too. And I'm trying to be more sensitive to that, which is hard when sometimes it's somebody that you expect to be more supportive of, the younger generation.
Yeah, it could also be helpful to say something like, asking why they think that, and then whatever the response is, say, I used to think something similarly to that as well, but here's what I've actually learned. Dana?
Yeah, it's great that you identified the defensiveness and shame. And recently listening to Dr. Becky, and she talks about the most generous interpretation. And so if we can get more familiar and curious about our own emotion. You said that, you didn't want to react and instead you wanted to respond. So you could ask, yourself, what is the emotion that I'm experiencing currently? And even becoming familiar with what is happening in the body during that time. Where are you feeling this emotion? And does it have a shape or a color? And does it feel like butterflies in the stomach or a chest, weight. So being curious and open and observant with that emotion and kind of lean in. And there's another practice for self-regulation, grounding technique practices. There's also balance and coordination practices. So often when we're in that defensive or that rumination or that stress, we're in the default mode. And I guarantee you, if you stand on one leg and close your eyes just for a moment, you won't be thinking about what you're thinking about. You actually will be focusing on not falling on the ground. So it's just a in the moment, quick little tip of using the body for helpful petting purposes.
Thanks, Anna.
I like that a lot. I think that could be really helpful. I think especially trying to picture a visual. I'm a very visual person, and doing a quick little yoga move randomly will be enough to distract me. So that's something I'll definitely keep in mind.
Brian?
I kind of a variation on what Kristen suggested. If someone is expressing, if you say you want to, change your answers or change your responses when you feel triggered by someone making a statement that's insensitive or feels demeaning to you as an ADHD person, turn it around on them. Meet it with curiosity, just like we do in coaching. Maybe ask them, "Oh, you feel this way about ADHD people? Why do you feel that way? Can you tell me what experiences you've had that lead you to feel that way?" And I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee it, but I strongly suspect they're going to have a hard time answering that question. And if you turn it back on them with a little bit of introspection, not only will it be probably an effective means of shutting them down, but it might help them open up a little bit. Maybe the beginning of them like, "Oh, need to think about this a little different way." And so I was just perhaps meet it that way. Try to start a conversation about why they feel that way, and then just relate it with your personal experiences. But then I'm also thinking that we're talking about an interfamily dynamic here. It may not be really about the ADHD. People might realize intuitively that you feel sensitive about it, so they're acting out. They're bringing it up because they know you're sensitive about it. So it may not actually be about the ADHD at all. It may be some combination of the both, but consider the source. I mean, we can't get into a detailed analysis of the situation, but sometimes when you consider people are coming from an emotional state, like they might be looking for a reason to something they can use to separate yourself or elevate themselves at your expense, something like that. It's just worth considering what the real source of this is.
Lisa?
A phrase that I really like that's just kind of quick and like you can kind of be almost dismissive is, "I'll take that into consideration." Especially if it's like family and you don't want to be aggressive or you don't want to start an argument or you don't, of course, we don't always agree with what they're saying, but it just allows them to say what they need to say and we just end it there.
I like there's a variation of that I kind of like that where it's, well, that's one idea. Because sometimes we don't want to give any space for our response to be interpreted as maybe they're right? So just kind of saying, that's an idea is probably one of the most neutral responses that we can give that also is clear to read between the lines. Jesse, this is a great question.
Yeah, this is all great advice. Thank you. And I will, over the last year or so with coaching, I'm keeping you guys in my mind instead of, past voices, past thoughts. So I'll be thinking of you guys while I'm keeping my cool in the kitchen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse, for your question. All right, let's take another question.
Rachel's question was sharing tips on time management. I always think I can get done more than I actually can, and it always slays me. I end up overworking and getting burned out. So I really hope you can share what helps you with time management.
Okay. Kristen, you want to start it off?
Well, my first thought is to consider not only time management, but energy management. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, because we can't really manage time. We only can really manage our energy in the space of time, right? Something that you said in your question is you said that I always think I can get more done than I actually can. Great. So you have a reliable sort of data point. So you always think you can get more done. Awesome. Guess who else always thinks they can get more done? Me, and I think everybody else here as well. And so if we can let go of what we think and look at sort of the reality, and we do this a lot in our coaching groups where we are regularly asking our members to Make a prediction on how long you think this task will take you and have it be a point of curiosity. And then actually start a timer, a stopwatch to track how long it actually takes you. It's one thing to be frustrated because this thing took you an hour that you thought was 20 minutes. But if you do the same task 5 times and every time it takes you an hour, the thing that's frustrating you is that you're not adjusting your actual expectations, right? And so if we keep thinking or wanting to take 20 minutes and it never has, right, that's kind of like hitting our head against the wall, hoping it's not going to hurt. So when we can look at this idea of developing time wisdom, and we develop wisdom through experience, right? We take information, we learn it, that's knowledge. Take that knowledge and apply it, that's wisdom. So we have to let go of what it means. It is what it is. If the task that we think is going to be a 10 or 20 minute task is regularly and reliably an hour or more, plan for that. Now, one of the things that I do when I'm trying to make time predictions is I use my gut, because I know my gut's always wrong, but reliably so, right? So I will times it typically by about 3, especially if it's a task I'm familiar with. If it's not a task or project I'm familiar with, I will add even more time to that. And I get up to the point where there's a series of questions that I ask myself. So let's say it's a task that I think will take me an hour. Okay, so my gut tells me an hour. Then I'll say, could it take me 2 hours? Maybe. Could it take me 3 hours? It's possible. I hope not. 4 hours? No, there's no way it's going to take me 4 hours. Once I land on the time period that I say, no way, that's what I actually predict and give myself that time. Because I've tracked it. And it's like, it's my version of squinting for time, right? It's like, all right, I got to kind of go through this mental process of asking myself these questions. And as soon as my gut says, no way, there I have my answer. That's how long it's going to take me, right? And I'm not beating myself up for it. I kind of look at it as I kind of cracked the code on like the miscommunication between what my gut tells me and what evidence tells me. Dana?
Yeah, reading the question too, I would love to talk to Rachel more and ask is it your own expectations or if it's someone else's expectations? Because overworking or getting burned out can also be a sign of possibly not setting boundaries or not self-advocating or not knowing what kind of accommodations you need for work. I don't know if you're, self-employed or if you work for someone, but tolerating discomfort is part of this process or equation as well in terms of time management and energy management.
Laura?
So I don't want to say anything overused like time blocking. So I'm going to go with some of the less specific things that I tend to do. I like to think about the saying that we overestimate what we can get done in a day, but we underestimate what we can get done in a week or a month or a year. And if we can reframe that just to begin with, it's a fantastic place to start because we stop beating ourselves up for all the things that we should have gotten done that day. So because I don't want to go with things like time blocking that everybody talks about, I really like non-granular time tracking. This is counter to what Eric promotes actually in our coaching groups, but I think it's a nice addition. I think it's really nice to know how we are actually spending our time because we can be much more thoughtful when we can see what's actually happening. If we don't have an accurate picture of what's going on in our macro life, how can we even begin to know what needs to change? And this strategy is super helpful for people who forget to stop their timers when doing little tasks, because that is probably our biggest complaint about time tracking is people are just like, well, I can't remember to stop the timer, so this is useless for me. It's like, well, how do we change this so that it does work for you? It's much easier to remember to stop the timer and reset it when you're doing a significant shift in activity. You're shifting from work into leisure, work into social into bedtime. All of those things are easy transitions to notice.
Laura, did you know that the Pomodoro technique, the actual like full method technique, it does involve time guesstimation as part of the technique. So instead of guessing how long the task itself will take, you guess how many Pomodoros that task will take, which can allow it to be easier to track then, because then so if you're doing a 25-minute Pomodoro, all right, I think this thing will take, say, 3.5 Pomodoros, right? So then you can use that countdown timer to track, because you can see it. So it's a little bit more crude, but for some people, it's a little easier to just do that versus having to remember in that moment to stop the timer. Kristen?
I'm going to hope this is not just me and I'm normalizing. Laura, could you describe what you mean by non-granular time tracking? I think I understand, but I don't think I don't know if I wasn't checked in or I didn't check in on when you actually started to say what it was. And I understood what Eric's talking about because we've done that before. So thank you.
Yeah. So the difference between what Eric is talking about, which is estimating and then seeing if you can get it done within those boundaries that you already set. This is actually starting a count up timer when you start a new activity. So I sometimes, this is going to sound crazy, but I will start a timer when I wake up, and then I will start a new timer when I'm transitioning from my boot up time, as I like to call it, into my work day. And then I like to do it again when I'm transitioning into lunch and then back to work, back to like dinner and leisure. And this might sound crazy, but if you do it for even 2 weeks, you'll have a much better idea what your life looks like accurately, as
love
opposed
that.
to what you think your life looks like, which is, I think, very different for most of us.
So true. There's a great book, 168 Hours by Laura Vanderkamp. It's one of the exercises that's recommended in that to just take a week and completely log everything you're doing. It's eye-opening for sure. All right. Do we have another question before we take our first break?
Diane's question is, what are the top 3 to 5 game changers, habits, or tools that helped you get a grip on ADHD, overwhelm / disorganization?
Okay. Community, regular planning, letting go of perfectionism, doing less so I can actually get more done, trying to systemize as much as I can. Acceptance. I mean, acceptance is everything is harder when we are trying to use brute force to get the stuff done, not being mindful and accepting of our ADHD and the way our unique brain wiring works. If you can't change it, you can change how you think about it. And I think that is one of the most important starting points. And I think acceptance comes easier when we are connected with other people who also get it. Kristen, what about you?
That's so funny because the first thing I'm going to say is I'm the queen of disorganization. If that's not a positive reframe of acceptance, I don't know what is. That is totally me. And Eric, I'm going to share one of an actual, tactical thing to do that helped me that you suggested to me during my coaching season 2 years ago. Every time I start to feel overwhelmed, I do it again because I love the use of my phone camera. So I will take a picture of a space, then I will edit it, and I will use the pen marker and I will draw a grid on the thing, and I will number each, square, whatever it looks like. And I'll go, what does that grid 1 look like? What does that square 1? I'm going to go clean that up and put it somewhere. And one of the more layered tricks I learned is I'm not going to move that stuff from this square to someplace out of this picture. I'm going to make sure it's going to a home or to a box that says, you're in a hotel right now. You don't have a home. Because I play with the metaphor of dorms and houses and residencies and boxes and neighborhoods. And because the idea of you live in a dorm, you're there for a little while. So you're not a permanent home yet, because I don't know what neighborhood you're going to live in. And it's helping me have fun with it. It reduces that overwhelm. I have 50 million of these things that I've been growing over the past 2 years. It's helping a lot. And so jokingly, if I see something and I have no idea where to put it, that's in one of my squares, I don't want to just shift it to another room because it's going to end up in another picture and on the grid again. I got to figure out where is it going. And if I don't know, I'm going to put it in a box and go, you're living in that hotel, because the hotel is just a box. And then I'll go do the next square and I'll go to the next until the overwhelm calms down and I'm just doing that whole area. Don't
That's
necessarily
great.
have to be real systematic with it. It just helps bring the overwhelm down.
Dana?
So I would say my top go-tos are, like Eric said, acceptance, normalization and acceptance. Like, this is something all humans struggle with, or this is something all people with ADHD struggle with, or most people with ADHD struggle with. I would say that utilizing some self-compassion, like, what would you say to a friend if they were struggling with this thing? We criticize ourselves more than most people. So what is it that you would tell a friend, and tell that thing to yourself? And then number 3 would be, if you're overwhelmed, it's going to be really difficult to manage time, organize, plan, prioritize. So emotional regulation is key and foundational. So, do you have a practice, a daily practice of, what brings joy or what brings relaxation? Or, is it movement? Is it being with friends? Is it petting your dog? So emotional regulation practice.
Thanks, Anna. Laura?
I've got two tools that come to mind. And the first one that leaps into my mind is the dopamine menu, which Dana just made me think of. And Eric has a phenomenal episode of How to ADHD with Jessica McCabe about the dopamine menu if you want more information about that. If you literally Google dopamine menu, just to be clear, DOPAMENU, it reduces the number of choices that you have to help you then feel better in whatever area you're looking to feel better in. And so by having those choices, it's a tool and a habit all in one. You are practicing giving yourself fewer choices. You're giving yourself less mental load. And so for me, I'm going to loop back. My calendar is my biggest tool, and I can limit my choices by how I use my calendar. So I schedule everything, and then I can go from there. And in particular, I like to map out my ideal day and what my ideal self would be doing. And then when I'm freaking out and overwhelmed about, oh God, what should I be doing right now? I can look at that calendar and say, oh, hey, past me said that future me would probably be happy or better off if they were doing this right now. And that can help a whole lot to sort of take yourself out of the picture and look at yourself from the third person, again, with compassion, as everyone else has said.
One other idea around things that help with the overwhelm when you have to organize is invite people over, right? Because it is amazing when you have company coming. Not only does all the stuff that you no longer see because it's become wallpaper, because it's been sitting there for like months or longer, suddenly you see it again. And with the urgency of people coming over, it is a great strategy to actually help you get yourself organized. I think the same thing is also true for like if you want to donate a bunch of stuff, schedule the donation first. Now you have a date. There are services that will pick up larger donations. And now you have to hurry to get it ready because they're going to be there waiting for you. All right. So trying to engineer that urgency. Body doubling. You can work in our co-working community, Adult Study Hall. We also have some guided sessions called Clean With Me each week, where you are not alone in doing the crap that none of us really like to do unless you're a unicorn and actually enjoy organizing and cleaning. So those are some of mine. Anyone else have any tips or strategies, tools for that one? Otherwise, I think we are at the point to take a break. All right, let's do that. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's take a look at some AI tools, because that I think was one of the questions we have on the list here. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. We start in just 2 days as of this release, so don't wait. If you want to join us for our upcoming season of coaching and accountability groups, go now to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our winter interest list. From there, you'll receive instructions on what you'll need to do so you can join us for our upcoming registration event tomorrow on Wednesday, January 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. And if you are listening to this early enough, we also have a registration event happening today on January 9th after our live Q&A. So that's coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our winter interest list to receive your invitation. Does time seem to go by in a blink of an eye? Are your best intentions at starting or keeping up with habits and routines feel impossible to start because you're still trying to get back to a regular pace after the holidays? Are you wondering what a regular pace looks like for your life? And do you have a hard time saying no to other people, but you're ready to say yes to yourself and take some of your time back? Whether you're new to ADHD or you already know what to do, but without some external accountability, you can't seem to get that momentum on your most important goals because trying harder just doesn't work. Then this year, why not try something different? In our coaching groups, you'll learn how to ask better questions, plan for the short term and the long term, create actionable plans that make sense to you, go from time blind to time wise, and so much more. Our coaching groups have proven season after season that we can do hard hard things, and we don't have to do them in the hardest way possible, and we definitely don't have to do them alone. We understand that ADHD is a lifelong condition, which is why, even after our 10-week coaching program, we offer ongoing support in our thriving alumni membership community, which has both coach-led and peer-led sessions every day of the week. Come experience the ADHD reWired difference, group coaching, accountability, and community for adults with ADHD, led by adults with ADHD, because we get it. Get started now by going to coachingrewired.com. Our winter season starts in just 2 days on January 11th, so don't miss. This is your last chance to get your questions answered and to get registered so you can start 2024 by starting with you. Growth happens here. One more time, that's coachingrewired.com. And we can't wait to meet you. And we are back. So we have a question about AI. Let's see. What's the best free AI that converts audio, speech to text to transcribe virtual therapy sessions run on a therapist platform? It's not Zoom. Okay. For transcriptions, and I don't know specifically for ones that are HIPAA compliant. I will say that. But if you're not looking for that, there's a bunch of different ones, including Zoom, which I think is really good enough. I'm not saying it's amazing, but it's pretty awesome. There is Otter is one, Otter.ai. My favorite one, I think, is this one called Woodpecker. There's that. If you literally do a Google search for AI transcription tools, there are a lot of them. And the thing that I'm excited about with these tools is its ability to capture action items and summarize meetings. Because I know for me, at the end of a longer meeting, my brain gets mushy, and it's really helpful to be able to have a tool that can synthesize kind of what happened and what the next action steps are. And part of your question is you're asking for a free AI tool. And here's what I'm going to say about any free tool. You're going to get what you pay for. And if you really like the tool, pay for it. Because the worst is when you get a tool that you love, it's free, which means the people that make that program and keep it up and running and keep it secure and keep it going, they're not getting paid. So they have now moved on and stopped supporting the app, right? So I think it's really important to think about this in terms of intellectual property and that support people making the tools that are helping us. Any other thoughts on for this question? Does anyone have any?
Well, I have some concerns too.
Sure.
If you're the client, are you making sure your therapist is aware of transcribing? And if you're the therapist, I started Googling immediately going, is this right? Are we supposed to do this? And it looks like there's already debate around all this, possibly. So I was just curious. I just wanted to throw that out there. I wasn't trying to start a debate right here because I had not ever considered that. Because I was like, this would be great for being able to take notes accurately and everything. But also, what sort of implications are there with HIPAA compliance, depending on which you are?
And I know that there are some like old school transcription services that are literally like you have someone listening to a recording and transcribing it. And there are ones that I do believe that are HIPAA compliant because they have to sign those privacy rules and everything like that. But that runs considerably more expensive because you're paying for someone's time. All right. I don't know if we have anything else to add to that one. Let's go to another question then.
Okay, so A asks, I'm in my early 50s, diagnosed this past year, working on balancing new meds, been married for over a decade. Husband has been dealing with it as well for that long and is completely frustrated. I felt like I was in a good place with my meds for a while, making little improvements, but I feel like things have been worse in the past month. Any advice on how to not feel as horrible as I currently do and feeling like I will never improve? I realize now that I can't make my husband feel better, but I can try to help myself get through this.
There's no way to ask any follow-up questions because that would be really helpful in answering this particular question. My first question would be, well, what's been going on in the last month that it's making things worse? My next question would be, when was the last time you took a break or a vacation? because when you are go, go, go all the time, our brain gets tired and we can struggle. All right. I said they don't know what caused the change. Brian, go ahead.
Well, following Eric's point about what's been going on in the last month, I noticed at the beginning of your question, you mentioned that you were balancing your new meds. How long have you been on these new meds? I wonder, is switching meds the change that's happened recently? Because that could absolutely result as what if we're getting used to a new med or medication, or we're trying a new one out and it doesn't work the same way, or maybe it's not a best choice for you. Changing up your meds is a significant change. I would consider that. And this is part of the process of trying out meds. Sometimes we try meds and then we try different dosages. Sometimes we try a different medication when the first one isn't working out. And sometimes people back and forth, they oscillate between them over time. So yeah, to answer Eric's question, I don't know what's going on in the last month. My first thought is, let's talk about these new meds.
So meds were 6 to 9 months ago, I think.
Did I miss the whole thing?
No, they just added that to the
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the meds aren't that new. Alrighty.
Dana?
Yeah, so I picked up on it feels like things will never improve sentence. And I was thinking about mindset and, is this a growth mindset, right? Do we notice when things change? Was it better in the past? When was it better in the past? What were we doing at that point in time? Are we interested in finding out more about what's not working for us, right? Like, can the process of learning and growing be something that is helpful as opposed to a fixed mindset or, things will never change? That's the kind of the critic and the judger there.
They also commented that it seemed good for like a month and a half and then just crashed with improvements, which makes me wonder, were you actually doing so well that you were firing on all cylinders for some time and then you burned your EF tank? Now, this is something that I learned over a decade ago after I attended my very first CHAT conference, which I think was now 11 or 12 years ago. I came back with a whole list of all these new tools and strategies that I was super excited to use. And I had 6 weeks of ultra productivity, which then followed by 3 months of being so stuck in neutral and not being able to get anything done that was the first realization of oh, you can't just keep going on firing on all cylinders. And you have to sometimes take breaks, even when you feel like you're not tired and you want to keep going, which is, believe me, hard. That is no small feat to be able to do that. But, I think when we are being self-reflective and we are observing our patterns, if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's that's crazy making, right? So when we say, okay, my tendency is to go until exhaustion. So I got to figure out what's my tendency and how do I intervene and take those breaks before I'm exhausted, which is hard, but it requires that openness and tracking some patterns, and really wanting to have a more intentional life instead of just going on autopilot. Any other thoughts to that one?
Yeah, can I add to that a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
I think of the idea of going and going and going until you burn out, and that, remind yourself that you need to manage the energy and all of that. Yet imagine you're going and going and going through the day, your brain is draining, and it's at the end of the day that you start going, am I doing too much? Wait, can I take a break? I need to go to the bathroom, but I really want to finish this. Our brain is already drained for decision making. So if you're trying to adjust based on your own self-talk in the moment, in real time, you might be fighting a losing battle. That's where planning comes into play, is step back, be rested, assess what has happened, and then go in and make planning changes and listen to your planner self. Do it anyway. Even if your planner self said, take a break at 2 p.m., 2 to 2:30, and you're like, but I'm on such a roll, I got to keep going. That could be the excited side of you going, and you're still going to burn out. You're still going to drain completely. But if you listen to the planner person of you that said, take this break, you're more likely to come back with a little more quality work and less time doing it, because then you're not going to sit there and go, oh, but should I keep going? Wait, should I take a break? I don't know if I did it, because I imagine there's, at least for me, that happens. Yeah, I'm trying to make decisions on a drained brain.
And I just wanted to share a comment that I saw in the chat, and a number of people have sort of plus one it. Kathleen, who's one of our alumni, said that being part of the ADHD community really helps me with those feelings, talking to other people who get it. And the coaching helps me remember the ahas I keep forgetting. And a bunch of plus ones on that as well. All right. Do we have another question queued up? And just want to remind people that if you want to go live, just put that right in front of your question, the go live, so we can talk with you.
This is from, I believe, Hang. Last year, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Now at 33, I'm excited about applying for a master's program. When I do manage to sit at my desk and commit to writing, I often find that I can accomplish quite a bit. However, more often than not, I find myself cramming for deadlines, which adds to the stress. Ideally, I should be dedicating each day to writing my personal statement, but frequently get sidetracked, browsing things. Despite having a friend work alongside me for support, the challenge of focusing persists. I'm actively seeking strategies to keep myself focused and efficiently utilize my study sessions. Any advice or techniques that could help me maintain my concentration and avoid last-minute rushes would be immensely valuable.
All right. Well, I think that writing personal statements is a dreaded task for lots and lots and lots of people because it's hard. I am curious about, you said you're working with a friend, kind of what's going on there, and is this friend maybe part of the distraction? And maybe there needs to be some discussion around and negotiation around like what role this friend is actually playing. So I'm wondering if you can answer that. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would ask questions and get more familiar with what is causing the procrastination. So when we're feeling unmotivated or we're noticing procrastination, it's usually one of three things. The task is one, boring, uninteresting, or we don't think it's important, right? That doesn't sound like this, right? And then number two, maybe there's some steps or we don't know how to do it, or it's not clear, the expectations. So something about it is unclear or unfamiliar, or maybe we're not sure about how to do it. So I don't know if there's any expectations that's like, oh, what exactly needs to go into this that will make it helpful. That's number two. And then three is it's emotionally charged in some way. So maybe writing about yourself feels like, whoa, well, who am I? And what do I want to say? What is my personal statement? I mean, and how are people going to take that? And how are people going to view me, right? It could be emotionally charged. So identifying the cause of the procrastination, I think, is really helpful in determining the tool. Once you then determine the cause, you can say, okay, well, it might be that, yeah, my phone is out and, I get easily distracted from my phone. And so therefore I need to put my phone in another room. Or yeah, my friend is there, like Eric said, and maybe that's helpful in budding, but maybe this isn't helpful in staying on track. So I think understanding the cause and then determining the tool is a helpful framework for me.
No, I think that's great. And really understanding procrastination as an attempt at emotional self-regulation, right? Like we are doing everything we can in that moment to push away the yucky feelings. And that's really what procrastination is. We are putting higher value on our current self and devaluing our future self. And I got to tell you, it's one of the ways to have a better life with ADHD is keep your future self in mind any way possible, because your future self loves you. There's just a really poor communication channel between your current and future self, right? Especially if it's stuff that you either are dreading doing or stuff that's like in the evening, right? Like I always think, oh man, my tomorrow self, like why don't you just listen to my tonight self who's, because I want to stay up now, but my tomorrow self screaming at me to go to bed and it's not listening, right? If I'm looking at a project or especially one that involves writing, if I'm noticing a lot of overwhelm or feels really daunting to me, one of the things that can be helpful is separate sort of the setting up of that task from actually doing the task itself. So maybe you have a morning goal of, let me just open that document, kind of read where I left off, and then you're done for now, right? So your brain is now percolating a bit. And when you come to actually sit down to work on it, it may be then easier to actually get engaged. So you're sort of separating the steps of, where did I leave off, what's next, to actually working on it. Because, starting is an executive function, that task initiation, right? And so if we have to emotionally regulate, which if it sounds like you would have to do that because this is a task you're not really, or projects you're not really enjoying, and it feels daunting. You have to sustain your attention. That's another executive function. You have to inhibit all the other things that you want to be doing that are drawing your attention. So there's a lot. So anything that you can sort of offset in the realm of executive functioning. So when you actually go to sit down to work on this, you've taken care of a lot of those other things sort of separately, may make it easier. And also, if you're stuck in the writing process, I want to encourage you to learn how to use ChatGPT, because it is a true writing partner, one that I like. If I had that when I was in college would have been so different for me because I struggled big time with writing. And I know how hard it can be to look at writing something and you have a blank page and you're just stuck. So you could be looking at the same thing and copy everything you've written, put it into ChatGPT, say, I'm stuck on, I need like 10 ideas on where to go next from here. Kristen?
You know me, I love the Q storm. I think getting out of your head of trying to be a problem solution focused, go into question focus, take a few minutes with a blank sheet of paper and write down as many questions as you can about where you're stuck, what it is, if it's procrastination, and just keep asking questions. And I would say, I've been figuring this out with my groups, I would say at least 5 minutes, because you need to start to get stuck with the questions to make you think outside the box for more questions. Those are the questions that are going to start bringing you answers. Don't try to answer the questions while you're doing it. I have learned a lot of different things by doing Q storms. Really love them. I pulled this from the Change Your Questions, Change Your Life book.
Yeah, it's a great book by Marilee Adams, but one we recommend for our coaching members. Brian?
Well, I just wanted to chime in on Dana's point about zeroing in on the source of the procrastination. I want to point out that any kind of a writing project, we might not think of writing something for a grad school application as creative work, but any kind of writing, anything original content you're creating for other people to see is creative work. And that kind of work requires a lot more executive function than doing math problems or filing things that you know exactly what the process is. So hopefully you can give yourself a little bit of grace for that this is hard work. If there's an implied should statement in there that this should be easier than it is, question where that expectation is coming on. It's exactly as hard as it's supposed to be for you where you are at this moment. And that's all you can do. So it's about having a little bit of radical acceptance about that. And then also chiming in on Kristen's point about doing a Q storm, I would also say for writing and creativity in general, I have done a course called The Artist's Way a couple of times that I recommend this book to my coaching members all the time, even though it's not directly ADHD related, but there's lots of really good transferable stuff in there. And there's a practice described in there called the daily pages, which is just free journaling every day. You have to just write anything for a certain amount of time. And I find that if you can just do free journaling about anything, you can write about how much these applications suck. You can write about how much I don't want to do this. You can write whatever's on your mind, but it will, if you do that for 3 pages, different parts of your brain will activate. And it can be a good way to break a creative block.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right, let's quickly take one more quick break. When we come back, we have a question about scope creep and we have a question about hybrid planning. So we'll get to those questions after the break. We will be right back. All right, it is that time once again for an ad for a thing that doesn't actually exist, even though we kind of wish it did. Are you the kind of person who thinks a break is that mythical time between coffee refills and ignoring the 37 tabs already open on your browser? Meet Sergeant Brain Break, the tiny tyrant living in your pocket, ensuring your noggin gets downtime it desperately deserves. When Sergeant Brain Break senses you're about to overload, it leaps into action. Picture this. You're typing furiously, about to break the world record for longest time without blinking. And suddenly, bam! Your screen displays a mandatory 5-minute kitten video. Aww. Resistance is futile. Relaxation is mandatory. But wait, there's more. Sergeant Brain Break isn't just a one-trick pony. If you try to sneak in just one more email, your chair will transform into a mildly uncomfortable whoopee cushion, ensuring you stand up and stretch those legs. And forget about skipping lunch. The sergeant will lock your keyboard and serenade you with a chorus of stomach growls until you grab a bite. For the workaholics, the overachievers, and the chronically distracted, the sergeant is here to save your sanity. And for those who need a laugh while they learn to relax, tune in to the ADHD reWired podcast. It's your go-to source for surviving and thriving with a brain that's more like a web browser with too many tabs open. So say goodbye to burnout and say hello to a more productive, recharged brain with Sergeant Brain Break, because we believe in working smarter, not harder. We also believe that this is not a real product. But you know what is real? The support and connections that you can find here at ADHD reWired. Need help taking a break? Hop into one of our Adult Study Hall co-working sessions at adultstudyhall.com or join our upcoming coaching and accountability groups and get daily accountability to take those breaks from your accountability team members. Find everything that ADHD reWired really does at ADHDrewired.com. And we're back. All right, we have some questions. First one here. Hybrid planning. What has to be paper? What has to be digital? What has to be both for deliberate redundancy? The first thing I'll say is nothing has to be anything. When it comes to planning, like there are apps, like the only rule is there are no rules. I mean, I'm being serious. Like, when people come into our coaching program, and one of the things I really tell them that you're going to be really disappointed if you're looking for the answer to the question, how do I plan? What we do is we provide that sandbox and lots of different frameworks. What your role then is to experiment, to iterate, to try out things, to hold that question of, all right, I'm trying this. Is this working for me? How am I going to keep that question in mind? Because like I need to track this over weeks or months. The calendar. I put questions in my calendar. If I'm trying something out, say, hey, I downloaded this new calendar app on this date. 3 weeks later, am I using it? What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? Right. So putting those questions to your future self. So again, nothing has to be paper or digital. Now, for me, I kind of use a hybrid model because for a lot of stuff, I do need to have it digital to sort of share and track stuff with my team. But I also love paper. Every week I'm clearing off my desks of all the random sticky notes of half-written thoughts. But I really like that process. So at the end of the day, no matter what it is, do what works. And if you don't know what works, experiment and keep experimenting until you find what works. Once you do find what works, just keep that mind open because we have ADHD and we find what works. And after a while, we get bored and then we're looking for another tool, right? So the one thing I would suggest, though, is with calendars, whether it's paper or digital, with a calendar, try to stick with a tool for, more than a week. With our to-do list stuff, I regularly change where I put my to-dos, literally just for the point of novelty. Because sometimes my brain just doesn't want to look at Asana, but it'll look at a sticky note. And sometimes my brain doesn't want to look at the sticky notes, so I put it on the dry erase board. And sometimes my brain doesn't want to look at the dry erase board, so I take out that really cool overpriced notebook that I got a couple of years ago that I never used, right? And being okay with that and understanding the point of novelty. Novelty is great, but let's be wise about how we're using it and not think that the tool is the problem, right? It's the fact that our brain gets bored is the problem, right? Novelty can be a solution to that. The other piece with calendars is I highly recommend that your calendar break stuff up into 15-minute time blocks, because I think if it's only a half-hour time block, which I see in a lot of paper calendars, you're going to miss that planning around a lot of transition time because a lot can happen in a 15-minute window, right? And if we are not seeing that 15-minute window, we might not give ourselves that really needed transition time between things. Kristen?
I just thought about it as you were saying that, using the other things for novelties and things like that, and even the calendar. I think my biggest problem that I'm discovering is not so much am I, changing up what I'm using. It's, do I have a home for those things? Do I always know where my calendar is if I'm using it on my iPad? If I got sticky index cards, I got sticky notes I'm writing things on. where the hell am I putting them? This is new thing that just hit me. I was like, that's the problem. So yeah, I think you can change things up. It's a matter of where do you house it so that you can get to it, because who cares what it's written on? Who cares if it's audio? Are they all together? Are the category in one spot?
Right. And it's the idea of like capturing and processing, right? So we want to be quick to capture. So, we don't have to hold on to a thought. So whether that's, grabbing your phone and talking to it, asking you to remind you of a thing, or grabbing that nearest napkin and writing that thing on there. Great. Like that's fine. But what's the process then for processing those things you captured, right? And so maybe that's an end of day review. Maybe that's the beginning of a day review. So like for me, I definitely tend to be like, I'm going to grab the nearest thing kind of person versus trying to get the exact right tool. So having that secondary step of, all right, so I've captured ideas in 3 different places and different environments. What's my actual process for going through those things that I capture? So one of the things I often will do is once a week, I'm reviewing all the random sticky notes I've written. I look at my reminders app. I occasionally find that I have random tasks that end up on my grocery list. And I look at that and, so it's finding out where the stuff goes. And once you've identified that, even creating a list of where do you look to navigate all the places. So yeah, we don't always want to get up to go get the right notebook or to go to the computer or the phone, like capture the stuff. And if you want to be a quick capturer, then just be mindful of creating a process for yourself. So you go back to capture other things so you can have everything in a single place. And literally, if you use sticky notes and you have a notebook, you don't have to rewrite your sticky notes. You can literally just put your sticky notes in your notebook. So I hope that is helpful. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay, moving on then. Diana, thanks for asking all the questions you've asked today. How do you ward off or manage scope creep? This is a great question, and one that I regularly am battling quite a bit. So scope creep is this idea of, think about the book, Give Your Mouse a Cookie, right? It's like you start with one thing and then it expands into, I was just gonna, dust my blinds, but then it turned out to a complete like interior redecoration. It's like, okay, so I definitely know I have that tendency of, oh, but I could do this. Oh, but I could do that. Like that is something that I've done my entire life. And I'm telling you, like, when you're in a creative project, that could be great because like your brain is open and receptive to all these different ideas. And it really can be a source of brilliance. It could also be a source of panic attacks when you say yes to everything. For me, that's been one of my motivations to say no to a lot of things, because when I used to say yes to most things, I would get regular panic attacks because there was literally just too much to do. And I didn't like, it was so overwhelming that I felt like I was drowning. Right. So one of the questions that I regularly ask myself, and this is, I guess, semi-related to scope creep, is, am I overcomplicating this? Like for the moment that I even just ask myself that question, my default answer is yes. If I'm asking myself that question, yes, I'm overcomplicating this. Yes, I'm overthinking this. So when I'm in that space, what I will often do is I will share with someone, here's where I'm at with this. This is what I'm trying to doing. Am I overcomplicating this? Right. Another strategy that I've used, especially if I'm doing stuff on the computer, is I will put 2 sticky notes on the corners of my screen. One tells me this is what I'm doing. The other tells me this is what I am not doing. So let's say I need to upload a video. Okay, great. So I'm going to upload the video. What am I not doing? I am not going into Canva to redesign the logo or the front image for this thing. I'm just uploading the video, right? So when we learn our tendencies, it can be easier to sort of front load the stop action before we even start it. All right, Kristen and then Dana.
Okay, so imagine you're in the elementary cafeteria and a new kid has just joined the school and they're walking around with their tray and the teacher goes, go sit at the table. Well, the kid was the first in line, so doesn't know where those kids are supposed to sit. So goes and sits at a table. And the teacher yells, not that table. You're not supposed to sit at that table. That's for somebody else. They never told them the parameter, the boundary, the option of tables. They just said, go sit at the table. If you don't know where your boundary is first, you're likely to scope creep. And I turned this into the most simplistic form because I work with kids so often, and it helped me. The other idea, that more layered one, is, I think this might work, is you tell a kid, okay, you need to learn these 10 vocabulary words. That's what the teacher said. You go over there, the kid's not finished. They're like, writing all these, flashcards and stuff. And the teacher's like, I didn't say you could do all that stuff. And they're decorating it and just learn the words. But they didn't tell them what they wanted them to do to learn the words. So the kid is they're scope creeping on the teacher's idea of boundaries. The kid didn't get told. Same thing for us. We don't tell ourselves, where is the boundary? What is it? What is the intention of what we're trying to do? And I think that's a really good place to start.
And I think that's a great thing to think about, especially if you're working within a team, is don't sit in your own head wondering if should you be doing this or not. Like if you were assigned a task or project and you're unclear, ask, right? Because I'm going to tell you that nobody wants you to be spending time on something that is not actually what is wanted to be done, right? So check in first. And if this is an ongoing issue, tell whether it's your employer or your partner or whoever you're working with, say, I have this tendency to make projects bigger than I need to. If I'm feeling that, would it be okay if I just quickly checked in with you on that? And I can't imagine you're going to get a lot of no's for that question. Dana?
Yeah, you encouraged another thought, but I'm going to go to my original thought, which is that I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of ideas. I'm constantly inspired and invigorated by those ideas. And so I put my ideas in a parking lot. It's just a list of all these fantastic ideas that I have. And once in a while, I will take one of the ideas from the parking lot and actually create something out of it. But it is a parking lot. And so I fit there most of the time, because if I don't have that parameters, like Kristen was saying, or, scope or understanding, and be very specific with the expectations that I'm wanting to do, which is difficult, right, in the first place. So sometimes I also get some verbal processing help, right? I'll talk to a friend or a colleague and be like, oh, what do you think about this idea? And does this resonate? And how is this approachable? And that will help me as well.
That's great. Anyone else have any gems or wisdom around scope creep? For all the podcast listeners, Brian has a very thoughtful look on his face.
I was just thinking about how thorough and comprehensive all the answers we've heard already are. Thank you. I can't think of anything to add.
All right. And I think when we can't think of anything to add, that is a good place then to stop. So we're going to bring this Q&A to a close. I want to thank everyone here who helped with answering the questions. I want to thank everyone for asking the questions and being part of this wonderful ADHD community. So thank you, everyone. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at the same time. So if you've found value out of this, put it in your calendar. Keep coming back because we love talking with you. So that's all we have for this one. We hope that you have your new year off to a good start. Since I'm talking to people in the future right now, it's still confuses me, and I've been doing this for 10 years. So thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you next month. That's all for today, folks. Thank you to the team for joining me for what was our last Q&A of 2023. And if you are listening to this early enough on the day it came out on January 9th, you can join us for the first live Q&A of 2024 at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. How? Just head on over to the website at ADHD reWired.com and click on the events tab at the top of the page. From there, you can register to join us live on Zoom to ask your ADHD-related questions. Can't make it? Sign up anyway so you can get reminders before we go live every second Tuesday of the month. Then if you're looking for real-time accountability or weekly sessions to help keep you focused on your New Year goals, why not check out our Adult Study Hall community at adultstudyhall.com. It's free to try for the first week and only $19.99 a month after that. Love the show? I want to support our work. Would uninterrupted episodes with announcements at the end be an elevated listening experience for you? Then consider becoming a patron at the $5 a month level or more at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. We also offer a monthly group coaching session for patrons at $25 a month. So if you want a taste of group coaching, then join us on Patreon so you can join me for our next Patreon-only monthly coaching call on January 23rd. That's for patrons at $25 a month at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And while this episode is about to end, before it does, grab your phone, open up your podcast app, and search and subscribe to the ADHD Creatives podcast with Kristen Martz. Kristen is one of our ADHD Rewired coaches that you heard also on today's Q&A. It's our newest podcast here on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. That's ADHD Creatives Podcast. That's ADHD Creatives with an S. Otherwise, you can find everything I just mentioned, including our coaching groups that start in just a couple days, to our Facebook community, Patreon, and everything else at ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. For now, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening and for making it to the end. We'll see you back here next week.